And there we go. Cool. Okay, so good afternoon. The stream almost didn't start again. Welcome to the Just Gonna Say It podcast here on Dylan Talks Tone. So Thursday we had a problem and we just had it again. And so I had to kind of log out of a bunch of stuff and log back in. So there we go. We got it figured out, I think. Welcome to the Just Gonna Say It podcast. This is where we talk about guitar stuff here on Tuesday afternoons at 4 p.m. This is an ad-free podcast, so you can support the channel by using a super chat to ask a guitar question or some other contribution to the conversation today. We're going to do No Such Thing as a Dumb Question, Volume 12, where we take a bunch of questions from past videos. We're going to talk a lot about yesterday's video because there's a lot of views on it, and we want to talk about this a little bit. So I took a bunch of questions from that and a bunch of other stuff. If you have guitar questions, put a bunch of question marks in front of it or use a super chat, get it in there, and we will try to get to it. We have a bunch of stuff, so we're going to talk about it today. Do me a favor and like and subscribe to the channel if you like guitar stuff, because that's what we do. You can also go right here and go to DylanTalksTone and buy pickups and all kinds of other things. So, welcome. Let's just get straight into it, shall we? Because we got a bunch of stuff. So this is from yesterday's video. Unless it's ironic, this has to be the worst budget guitar guide I've ever seen. Jeez. Okay, so if you didn't pay attention, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this too. If you didn't pay attention, you might think that. But this was not supposed to be the cheapest guitars ever made. These were guitars that were supposed to be worth something, that you would actually want to keep, that are like really good, right? You can buy any number of cheap guitars, right? But that's not what this was about. This was about something that was like really worth owning. And so I really enjoyed making the video. I would have to say there's 20,000 views on it in the first 24 hours. So that's pretty neat. A lot of people really dug this video. Super chat from Dastardly Dave. Thank you, sir. Ad-free, always cool. Have you seen the Back to the Future Epiphone? I have seen the Back to the Future Epiphone. I just saw it today, and it is very, very cool. Yeah, I would be down. I'd be down for it. Let's see. Hi, Dylan. I appreciate all of your videos. My question is, I prefer running a boost into a compressor. Why would you recommend putting overdrive before, or would you recommend putting overdrive or before or after the compressor? It depends on the effect that you want. So if you want, let's see, I can't remember which way is which because that's not how I do it. So if you you'll get more compression if you put the compressor first and then the overdrive second. If you do it the other way around, you'll get more volume change. I can't remember which way is which, but I think that's it. If somebody else can remember, definitely, definitely get in there and help him with that. Next one, asking viewers to subscribe to videos before they've had a chance to see what you're about is unforgivably rude. Unforgivable. I stopped the video 25 seconds in. I won't finish it, and I will block your channel. Well, guess what? The joke's on you because you can't actually block a channel. And when you comment, it just means that you will see more of my channel. So sorry about that. Not sorry. That's kind of what happens. Yeah. That comment on the wasted time killed me. The parameters were laid out in the first minute. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Let's see. Tone K George said, I liked your video on affordable guitars. There's a place for expensive guitars alongside inexpensive cool guitars in the same collection, but not cheap, crappy guitars you regret buying. And that's the thing. I think that, and a lot of people, so a lot of people made a lot of really good suggestions, other stuff, right? Like, I want to say there's a bunch of Ibanez and LTD and, all kinds of other stuff. The reason I didn't include those is for a few reasons. One is I don't have personal experience with good, cheap Ibanez stuff. Everything that I've ever used, $500 and below that was Ibanez, was a little sketchy. Okay. I didn't like it that much. And I feel to get a really nice Ibanez that you got to pay more money. LTD, I don't have any experience with at all because those guitars don't really interest me that much. I'm not saying they're not good, but I wanted to put stuff in here that I actually had experience with. Like, I think that's important. Anybody can go on the internet and make some kind of thing and be like, people say this is awesome with no experience, but it doesn't really hold any water in my opinion. So I was like, no, I'm going to actually talk about guitars that I actually know. And that was really it. Put the compressor first. I agree. That's what I would do. You say you make pickups. That's what I thought too. I do. I sent you 3 emails regarding buying some P90s for some guitars I was working on and a couple of my own, probably a dozen pickups all told. It's actually all totaled. I never heard a word from you. The Warman pickups I ended up buying were very cost effective and they answered my inquiry within 4 hours. Wow, that's pretty good. So we always tell this to everybody. Use the chat on the website. The chat on the website goes straight to my phone and I get to it when I can. And it's the most direct way to communicate with me. If you have a question, now don't use it for this kind of stuff. This is why we're here for this stuff. But if you have a product question or an order inquiry or something like that, use the chat on the website. It goes straight to my phone. After hours, I do what I can. I try to be really fast about it during hours, but it's just me. It's just me. If you email me, it will get lost. I literally get hundreds of emails a day, and so I do what I can with that. But the chances of you getting lost is very, very high, and we say that all the time. And never ever depend on Instagram or Facebook, because Instagram or Facebook, the way they put things in various mailboxes with a business page is super sketchy. I hate it. I've never liked it. And that's one of the reasons I actually pay to have that chat on my website, because it's the most reliable. So if you ever want to communicate with me about a product or an order or a custom idea with custom pickups or something, do that. Okay. That's the easiest way to do it. I hate to miss people. But again, it's just me. And so we have to do what we can. Let's see. Let's see. Shane. Oh, I knew Shane was going to have some input here. The RG421 is super lightweight, great neck, and looks super metal, all for about $450 US. Thank you, Shane. I knew that you would have. I was thinking about you actually yesterday when we were getting some of these comments about Ibanez stuff, because I knew you have used a lot of those guitars. Yeah, excellent. Very cool. No budget guitars in this video. The title is a lie. This is for mid to high range guitars. This is a budget video for lawyers and doctors. If you're not doing a budget video, if you're doing a budget video, make sure it's about budget gear. It's a simple formula. Thanks for wasting my time. Okay, I'm going to leave this up because we need to talk about this. Okay. So the title is not a lie, because it was actually budget guitars that you want to keep. Okay. This was not cheap guitars. There's a difference. Okay. Number one. Number two, mid to high range guitars. Now this is 2025. Okay. So a high end guitar is $5,000, $4,000. Okay. $3,000. A mid range guitar is 15 to 2,000. I mean, I don't know if you've kept track of what things cost now, but it's not cheap. Anything under $1,000, if you can get a great guitar that you want to keep forever under $1,000, I think you're doing pretty good. Now, if you want to buy a cheap guitar, like from, with that you have to do a bunch of stuff to. There was a bunch of comments. Okay, for example, there was a bunch of comments and I respect them very, very much. They were like, well, I got this cheap guitar and this cheap guitar and this cheap guitar, and after doing some work on it, it was pretty good. But I didn't want those kind of guitars in this video. My goal was for folks who want to just play, who don't have to work on a bunch of stuff, who don't want to worry about it. Here's the interesting thing about this. Okay, so it's a simple formula. I want to understand what that formula is supposed to be because, the budget is different for everybody. But there's something that I think a lot of people really miss when we talk about the cost of things. And that is, there's a lot of folks, and I don't know why we do this with guitars. I talk about this all the time, and I still don't understand it. Why, with guitars, are we willing to buy a subpar product that needs work before it is usable? I don't understand that. Okay. Now, if you want to do it and if you enjoy it, that's cool. I like doing frets, right? Like I like sitting and watching Netflix and, or a documentary or a YouTube video and sitting there and kind of tinkering with frets. I like doing it, right? But if we're going to say, hey, random friend of mine that I like, okay, so this, my friend Bob, who I work with or who I know from the gym is like, hey man, I want to learn to play guitar. What should I buy? If you tell him, buy this cheap guitar and then watch a bunch of YouTube videos to learn how to fix the frets because the thing's going to be crap when you first get it out of the box, how long do you think he's going to play guitar? No, you're going to be like, you know what I would do if I was you? Because I like you and you're my friend and I want you to play guitar. I would say you could go on Amazon and buy a bunch of crappy guitars, right? Or you can go and buy, a Harley Benton or whatever. Okay, you could do that if you wanted to. But if it was me and I was spending real money, what I would do is I would save up a couple of paychecks and I would spend $500 or $600 and get yourself something nice. And then you would enjoy playing that guitar and you wouldn't have to mess with it, right? That's real life, right? Just because you want to mess around with a guitar with bad frets and a bunch of crap going on, that's not real life for a lot of other folks. The majority of people who want to work on their guitars before they are usable is very little. And what's weird about this to me, I just don't understand this mentality, is trying to make an excuse for a product that doesn't work when you buy it. So when you buy a printer, when you buy a pocket knife, when you buy a television, when you buy a vacuum cleaner, when you buy a coffee pot, if it doesn't work, or if you have to fix a bunch of stuff on it, you put it back in the box and you return it. So why with a guitar do we tolerate this? I don't understand it. It is the weirdest thing to me. I don't get it. Unless you are actually cheap and trying to do the most with as little as possible for the point of that, which there is reason. I get it. But that's not what you would encourage your friend or your relative that you like to do. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't be like, you know what I would do? I would go and buy this car that has like 17 things wrong with it. And then you have to go learn how to fix all those things. And then you might have a reliable car that you might only have to work on sometimes. You wouldn't recommend that. You just wouldn't do it. I'm a Land Rover freak. I've had a bunch of them. Right. And I love them. I think they're great, but I would never buy my daughter one. Right. Like I just wouldn't, because there's just too much stuff to do. There's too much stuff to know. There's too much time you have to spend in a forum, like to know, like, how often you have to change the head gaskets, for example. Like you just wouldn't put your daughter in that car. You'd be like, you know what? I'm going to get you a Camry because you'll never have to work on it. Right? It costs a little more for a used one of the same year, but that's what you should do. And it's the smarter thing to do. I don't understand this with guitars. I don't get it. It's a weird thing. Please explain it to me in terms that make sense, right? I don't get it. Okay, next. To all the people buying this guitar. So we're talking about the $2,000 PRS Clio SE. You do realize that you are now setting the new baseline for cheap guitars. Okay, this is not a cheap guitar. in a few years, you will be complaining that guitars are too expensive. I think this person and people like him already complain that guitars are too expensive, to be fair. Pat yourselves on the back. You caused it. Don't reward money grabs. So don't allow companies to be profitable and make stuff that you don't want to buy. Don't reward money grabs. Stop being shills for greedy companies. Okay, so the funny thing about that is, remember that one time when we were having a podcast and we were talking about this guitar, and Herman Lee actually like showed up in the chat. Wasn't that cool? That was pretty cool. And he was like, "No, I didn't mean for this guitar to be a cheap guitar." And it actually is a cheap guitar because I was trying to make a guitar that was better than a $3,000 guitar, and we ended up doing it for $2,000, and I thought that was pretty good. If you remember that comment, I was like, that's all right. Or something like that. He said something like paraphrasing, but no, it wasn't meant to be an inexpensive guitar. It was meant to be a good guitar, and it is. So yeah, I don't understand. There is a difference between a budget guitar and someone's budget. Yes. Just because someone buys cheap guitars they can't afford doesn't make them budget guitars. Okay. Yeah. My first guitar, $200 plus $50 for Graphtec saddles, $250 for a Plex setup and a new nut, total $500. Yeah, that, and you know what? That happens a lot, right? So if you have an inexpensive guitar and you have to do a bunch of work to it, to get it playable, that happens a lot. AI art posters in the background are a fail. Oh, that's interesting. He must be talking about these ones. Well, that one's a Frazetta. And this one, I can't remember this artist over here. They are digital reproductions of actual art pieces. They're not AI art. But let's see. 5 things you should do to every cheap guitar. I wish you were more specific in this video regarding specifics of intonation and string heights, etc. Okay, so this is a good question or a good thing to bring up. You know, when we do these videos about setup and stuff, well, all we can really do is kind of give you general stuff, right? Because I don't know how you play. I don't know what your playing style is. I don't know what the weather's like where you live. I don't know what guitar you have, actually. I don't know what strings you're using. So it's very difficult, right? One of the things we try to do is to give you a range and to give you an order of operations. And then usually in those videos, what we try to do is say, you need to go look up this is what I always tell people, and this is what I tell my friends. And you should know that, actually. This is an interesting thing, a little aside here. What I tell you in a video is the same thing I would tell my friends. So if my friend calls me, and they do, hey, what would you do? I literally would be like, you know what? I would do this. And it's the same thing I'm telling you, right? So I don't make something up for YouTube. I just don't. Okay, so on setup stuff, typically what I'll tell everybody is here's your order of operations, right? This is the order of operations is more important than anything else. What you choose to set the guitar to doesn't really matter. Obviously it matters in the final result and whether you like it or not, but whether it's a couple thousands here, this way or that way doesn't really matter. Order of operations is more important than anything. Then you can make all those adjustments correctly as long as the order of operations is good. Then, as you do that, personally, what I would do with a guitar I'm not familiar with is I would set it to factory specs first. And then I would just basically adjust it to how I want it, you know, because like I think we talked about this in the video yesterday, Fender stuff's too high for me. I don't like it. Their Fender standard is too high for my liking. But the reason guitars are usually set higher is because it actually is easier for more people. It's kind of agreeable to more people, if that makes sense. So yeah. Let's see. We're going to talk about technology. Let's see. To be honest, this new tech is just rubbish. Okay. And it's easy to ignore because it's just not needed. The old school gear will always top the new tech. Not true, but okay. You could believe that, I guess. If need be, there is always acoustic instruments. No, that I agree with. Bluetooth and the internet won't be around forever. They may not even last another 20 years. Wow. Okay. Do you know they actually sell? You can buy them. I should have linked it in the description. I don't know why I didn't. But you can actually order tinfoil hats on Amazon. You can get those. And it sounds like you need to stock up. Let's see. What would be a good string height for a person who is learning that does not know his style yet? Okay, this is a great question. So this is where I would just go with the factory spec of whatever guitar you're playing, because I don't know what guitar you're playing. So that I can't really answer that question, right? So I would go with whatever factory spec is, and then you can decide as you go how you feel about that. Do I pick too hard? Do I not pick hard enough? Do I am I squeezing out of tune all the time? Am I right? Like those are choices that you have to make. And as you learn, you might not know the difference. One of the things, and I think this will come up in one of these questions, is people are like, well, this guitar has this size frets and this guitar has this. Don't worry about that. If you're a new player, get a cool guitar. End of story. Get a cool guitar that is nice. So anything that we watched yesterday, we went through all those guitars. Let's take Telecasters, for example. If I was going to buy a Telecaster or recommend to a new guitar player, and I'm going to get around to this setup thing here in just a second. If I was going to recommend to a new guitar player, this is what I would do. I would say, okay, if you're going to buy a Tele, you could either buy a Classic Vibe. This is what I would recommend. A Classic Vibe, the Mexican one, or the Indonesian Standard. Now, do you want it to be like kind of vintagey feeling, or do you want it kind of modern feeling and looking? Then if you want it vintagey, get the Classic Vibe. If you want it more modern, get the one of the other ones. Okay. Beyond that, what do you want, a rosewood fretboard or a maple fretboard? Okay. Does that narrow it down because some of them are available, in this combination? And then, most importantly, maybe even before any of this, what color do you want? I don't want a white one. Okay, well then that mixes these. So now you're like, okay, well, of the combinations that I want this style of guitar. I want this, I don't know, whatever. Like I want a rosewood fretboard, and I really like that blue. Okay, so there you go. So now you've narrowed it down to one of two guitars. Now it's just like, which one do you like, which one is available, and which one is in your price range. That's all the thought you need to give into it. Now, as a beginner, if some ding dong on the forum somewhere is going to be like, yeah, but that guitar has bigger frets and this guitar has smaller frets and this neck and blah. You don't know the difference. Don't worry about it. And here's the problem is most of the people who think they do don't either. So here's what you do. You buy the guitar and you play it and you learn that as your baseline. You learn whatever as your baseline. This guitar is not going to be easier or harder to play for the most part, Fender stuff, based on fret size or based on neck profile or any of that. Okay. All that stuff doesn't matter to a new player, because what you need to do as a player is you need to set the guitar up as to factory specs and just play it. Right. And then you will get used to that. And then you'll be like, you know what? I want to experiment with a fatter neck. I want to experiment with bigger frets or smaller frets or whatever. I want to experiment with a thinner neck. I want to experiment with a maple neck because I like how it feels instead of rosewood, right? Like then you start to experiment. And if you can't tell a difference, then it still doesn't matter. And then maybe 3-4 years from now, and you've been playing a bunch and you've tried a bunch of guitars, then you're like, oh, well, now I get why people choose this fret size, or why I choose this neck, or why I choose whatever. But here's the problem. If you jump straight in on day one and you're like, I have to have X, Y, Z in order to play guitar, you will always be one of those people. And those people are A, annoying, and B, not very good, because then they can only play one kind of guitar. If you look at really good guitar players, like not me, I mean like really good guitar players, they'll be able to play any guitar, any fret size, any neck, really, any neck, in any setup, really. It doesn't matter. It won't matter because they'll just be a good guitar player. Why? Because they know what they want, but they can also play other stuff. The people that get in the chat and are like, I can only play this neck profile, and I can only play fat necks. I can only play. Now, I know that there are going to be some people that be like, yeah, well, I'm 6'7" and I have hands that are like this big, or, you know, the opposite direction, right? I'm 4'8" and, you know, but I always bring up the little Korean kids on YouTube playing friggin' classical guitars with necks this wide, shredding better than any of us. So you can do it. Don't worry about it. Don't let people tell you to worry about it. Just play and then explore later. Yeah, that's a huge rant that drives me nuts too. My problem is I like all guitars. Me too. I agree. I always thought, let's see, Hang on. I wear my tinfoil hat underneath my hat. Oh, good job. Yeah, that's a good idea. Hang on. Let's see. I'm trying to go through all of this stuff. Real quick. Oh, are you guys talking about Glocks being discontinued? Yeah. Different conversation for a different time. But yeah, that is happening. 20 years ago, I thought I couldn't play anything different from Ibanez. Indeed, I was just a bad player. Today, I play the Les Paul and the Telecaster. You know, it's funny. That was kind of the way I am too. I used to hate Telecasters because I thought they were super flat and boring, and now I love them. And I think if you, the biggest problem I think that we have as guitar players is we just tell ourselves not to like stuff. If you like it, if you let yourself like stuff, you're just going to end up liking it because they're all cool. Like, Dylan is correct about getting used to playing different guitars. My 3-day rotation Strat, Les Paul, Mustang, and I find it very helpful moving between scale length, neck radius, and pickup types. That's a great point. If you on purpose have a couple of different styles of guitars, different neck profiles, I do too. So I have my Les Pauls right there. I have a Les Paul there, a Strat there, and what's the other guitar that I have out a bunch? Oh, a short scale acoustic. And yeah, all the different string tensions, different string weights, all that kind of stuff, different scale lengths, it all really, really helps. Super cool. Yeah, very good. Right. How to use or set your guitar amp correctly. Dylan, I have no idea whether you're using a tube or a solid state amp. I have no idea whether the amp has a preamp or boost section. When demonstrating how to set up your amp, you really should show what amp you are using. We should also do a video. I keep saying this. how to pay attention during a YouTube video. In that YouTube video, I said I am using a Fender Tone Master, and I put all the knobs on 7 except for reverb, which is on 2.5 to 3. Just like every video, because I always use the same settings and the same amp all the time. I said that in that video. So I don't know if you just weren't listening or what, but okay. Let's see. Is the PRS Clio too expensive? Brand names like Fender, Gibson, PRS, etc. are way too expensive and frankly a thing if the past. For the modern player who's not backing a famous band, building your own under $400 is the way to go. Everything has changed. I got to tell you, if you try to build a guitar for under $400, you have to use parts that are so cheap that there's no way that guitar is going to be good. If you add up the cost, just the cost, okay? And if you're building a guitar for $400, here's what I'll tell you. I know for sure, if you're building a guitar for $400 right now, you don't get the pricing that I get. Because if you're building more than one guitar for $400 a piece cost, okay, your business is not solvent. So that means that WD or any of the other suppliers is not giving you builder cost, right? So you're paying list price. So you're paying $60, $80 for a set of good tuners. Now, I can buy Geikers on Amazon for $23. They're not good. I mean, they're okay. But if you're going to build a good guitar, okay, you're going to have to buy good tuners. You have to buy a good bridge. You're going to have to buy good hardware in general. You're going to have to buy a good neck because you're going to have to buy a neck. Or you're going to have to, because you can't build and stay solvent. You cannot build a guitar from scratch for $400. The labor involved and the machines involved, your power bill, you will not be able to do it. You can't. Not unless, okay, in most modern countries, you cannot build a guitar for $400 and have it be very good. It's just not possible anymore. Now, as an intellectual exercise and being like, I'm going to go to Home Depot and for fun, see how much guitar I can build for $400, that's different, right? And the person who's, kind of doing it as a hobby on the side, but he's still going to have to use cheap parts. You're still going to have to buy Amazon parts. You're still going to have to really cheap out on stuff. You're not going to be able to get good pickups for it, and Guitar Fetish do not count as good pickups, okay? So you're not going to be able to get good stuff for that guitar and have it be under $400. It's just not possible. If you did that, I'll review it on the channel. Just be prepared. All right. Martins notoriously come with high action out of the box. This is talking about guitar setup. So a lot of acoustics are going to come with high action out of the box, and here's why. Because it's not actually adjustable, okay? It's adjustable, but only in one direction. So the way you adjust acoustic guitar action is you set the neck relief, right, first, and then you shave down the saddle. You actually it's a pain in the butt. You have to usually buy a couple sets of strings. You have to detension everything. Usually on a Martin, you have to pull the pins out. You have to take the saddle out. You have to put it on a block. I got one of them roller skate things. You put it on a roller skate thing and on some sandpaper, and you shave that thing down and hope you don't go too far. You do all your math. You make sure it's super flat on the bottom. Make sure it's not accidentally angled. Otherwise, your intonation is off, etc. You put it all back together. You tune it all back up. You check everything and hope that you didn't go too far. And then decide if that's enough. Then take it all back apart, detension it, pull the pins back out, take the saddle back out. And, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries. It takes like a half a day for somebody who's not experienced to set the action on an acoustic guitar. But that's what needs to be. That's how it's done. That's how it's supposed to be done. That's the right way. So if they set it too low, by nature, you cannot put material back on a saddle. So you actually would have to, and the interesting thing about traditional acoustic guitars, so like a D18, a D28, a D45, playing style has more to do than anything with how you set that guitar up. I have a friend who is a huge Martin guy. Of course, I got a couple of Martins. He likes his action way higher than I like mine because of the style of music that he plays. Those guitars are actually meant, like a D28, for example, is meant to be played kind of hard and actually a lot of finger picking and stuff. And you need higher action for that. So if you were to set it up lower than that, it does two things. One, it'll do two things. One, it'll make it to where you can't play that style of music as effectively. And two, an acoustic guitar is very sensitive to how high or low the action is. On my Breedlove, many years ago when I first set it up, I took it too far. Not because it buzzed or anything, because it sounded funny. It sounded different. And so I put another saddle on it, and I didn't take it as low because the break angle of the strings and blah, 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 all the, nerdy stuff about it made it to where if I took the action too low, I didn't like it. If the strings were too light, I didn't like it. So you have to start off higher with an acoustic guitar and bring it back down. And that's not every acoustic guitar. Some, like there's going to be more modern ones that are, not as mission focused, right? So if you buy one of those, I don't know, blue Ibanez's or whatever, with the cutaway and the huge plastic tuner in it, that might come lower from the factory because I can hear a bunch of people in the go, well, I had this, Court something and the action was lower. Well, that's because it's marketed to a person who is probably going to use it lower, right? But something like a Martin where there's a tendency to need higher action for the style of music, that's different. Let's see. I generally prefer tune-o-matics. Me too. Sorry, I'm trying to go through some of this stuff and try to catch up here. $400 is hard to hit, even doing everything from scratch. Compromise on hardware definitely has to happen. And don't get me started on the amount of labor involved. No, it's totally true. And actually, Doc, I know that Doc built a guitar for $400 because he entered in a contest a couple of years ago for that purpose, to see how good a guitar he could build for $400. And it is really, really hard to do. Everybody wants to use that number at $400. And it's so funny because it's like, I don't know where that number came from, but that number is always the number. It's all over the internet. It's like every guitar that should cost $400 and everything else is a money grab. You hear those posts, right? And it's always $400. I don't know where that money came from. Not really sure. They say acoustic high action, the neck's moving. I know not new, but be careful if used. So the reason neck action moves on acoustics is actually doesn't have anything to do with the neck most of the time. The neck is usually okay. It's actually the top. So if you, I've got an old acoustic that this happened to. The biggest thing with an acoustic guitar and action is humidity. If the humidity gets too high, then the top will actually take on moisture and swell, and you'll actually get like a hump in the top, and it will raise the action. If you get the guitar too dry, it will shrink, and it will actually pull down, and it will also pop binding and stuff. But if you don't keep it in a good minimal range, your action can move around, and it's typically because of the humidity and the top swelling and shrinking. Yep. Thousandths, go metric. So I really like the metric system. For all of you who complain about that all the time, I actually really like it for anything over a millimeter. Okay. So I have one of my pickup winders actually measures in thousandths of a millimeter, and it's really a pain in the butt. I really like thousandths of an inch for anything under a millimeter. So if I'm measuring, blade stock thickness on this knife right here, or if I'm measuring setting up for my laser or something, and we're talking, a thousandth of an inch for the kerf of this laser and 6 thousandths of an inch for the kerf of this laser, I like that. Anything over a millimeter, I really like the metric system. But if you have to be more precise than a millimeter, I'm going to default back to thousandths of an inch. That's just kind of where, and it's just what I like. It's just how I like it. But I like the metric system for most things. The only thing you can't do like around here is you can't measure stuff like we were measuring something on the deck the other day, like outside, and you got to go standard for that because we don't do things in meters. And so like lumber is not cut for meters. So like if I'm going to, I bought one of those canopies for like over, shade canopy over the deck. And it was like, well, it's 12 feet from there to there. And it's 8 feet from there. Like it, we just don't have meters for that. That's just not my fault. Okay. Why do hollow bodies sound different than solid bodies? Creates an electrical signal. It's not electricity there, Tesla. Actually, an electrical signal is electricity. That one was funny. Let's see. So much fake talk on pickups. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we get that a lot, actually. We get a lot of folks who, I don't know, they don't. It's what we do. You don't know what you're talking about pickups. I'm like, okay, that maybe not. You might know more than me, for sure. Probably not. I mean, a lot of people know more than me about a lot of stuff. But I guess if you were to say something to me like that, what I would ask, my next question would be, was how many did you make today? I know how many I made today. How many did you make this month? I know how many I made this month. How many did you make last year? I know how many I made last year. How many have you made in the last 12 years? About 18,000. So, I know a little. Let's see. 5 ways to fix ground loops in a guitar. Oh, this is an interesting question. I don't know. How did that happen? Hang on. There we go. Could it be possible? This is an interesting question. This comes up a lot. Kind of a techie question here. Could it be possible? Understood as a ground loop inside the guitar having 2 shielding spots unconnected? For instance, 2 separated pickup cavities. Or is this a misconception? Thanks so much for all your wisdom. Yeah, not really wisdom, but it's just science. Okay. It is impossible to have a ground loop in a passive guitar. And the reason is because in order to have a ground loop, you have to have a difference in potential to ground. Okay? And mathematically, it's just not possible in a guitar because you only have one ground. It is the misconception comes from, this is an interesting thing. I need to do another video about this probably. We haven't talked about this in quite a while. That's a really old video he was commenting on. There's only one ground in a guitar, okay? And it is the ground on the output jack. So everything terminates at the output jack. Now we might say, well, I soldered it to the volume pot. I soldered it to the tone pot. But there's really only one ground. It actually only goes one place. When we're talking about a ground loop in a guitar rig, typically that has to do with the potential for actually being different ground potentials. So if I plug, let's see, this wall right here is on one circuit. The plug on the other side of my foyer is on a different circuit. Okay. So if I plug my pedal board into that one, the pedal board power supply, into that one over there, and then I plug my amp into this one over here, then when I connect the guitar to the pedal board to the amp, they're both grounded, but in different places. And because of the scale of the house, it is possible for me to, because a house grounds in one place outside, there's a thing that goes in the ground, but because of the feet of ground wire that is in a house and the lengths of circuits and more importantly, the loads on the circuit. Okay. So loading on the circuit. So if I have, this one right here, outlet is on my garage. It actually is on my garage. So if I'm running my air conditioner, because I have an air conditioner in the garage, in the shop. So if that air conditioner is running and then this one is over here, then I can create a different potential to ground for each circuit. Therefore, I can cause noise because I can have a ground loop. That is not possible in a guitar because a guitar is literally an extension, and all it is it's just one little piece. So you can't actually have a ground loop within a guitar. So all that star grounding and all that stuff is just kind of dumb. So there you go. Kind of interesting stuff. It's fun stuff. If you place your foot in front of each other, then that's how stuff was measured. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is PRS confused about tone wood in your perspective? No, not at all. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think he's done a very good job of creating different audiences for different products, as he should. That's what he should do, that he owns a company, and that's what he should do. There will always be, okay, in any hobby, there will always be people who kind of glom on to a, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Whatever the hobby is, doesn't matter. Just human nature will make it to where we will always like glom onto a particular perspective, various understandings. I don't want to call them truths because they're not always true, but they're always understandings. There's, in the knife industry. So, I collect pocket knives, right? And for example, I'll give you an example. It used to be that when you bought a really high quality pocket knife, it had ball bearings in the pivot, right? So that it was like really nice and smooth, right? And cheaper knives had washers and more expensive knives had bearings. Well, my most expensive pocket knife has washers. And it is one of the most sought after pocket knives in all of the world, right? Because there is a reason why it has washers. So, but people will still, that's a pretty expensive knife. That should have ball bearings, right? And so it's kind of the same thing with tone wood. Well, that guitar has got basswood. That guitar, whatever, it doesn't matter. Poplar, basswood. We all have these preconceived ideas of what we think it should be. And so therefore, Paul Reed Smith has figured out, okay, I'm just going to create audiences for each and reasons to own each of these things. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's smart of him to do that. So no, he knows exactly what he's doing. And I honestly don't think he's lying to anybody. I think he really believes that stuff. I don't believe it the same way he does. I don't disbelieve what he says, but I also just apply it differently. So, it's great. It'll be fine. Yeah, there you go. Well, you guys, this is really fun. I like to do these every once in a while. Over the years, we've done 12 of them. This was volume 12. Do me a favor and go to Dylan Talks Tone right there and buy pickups. If you like what we do, subscribe to the channel. We talk about guitar stuff. It's what we do. Are you always going to hear something that you want to hear? No. Are you going to hear something sometimes that you don't want to hear? Yeah. But we're going to keep it real around here, and we're going to make you part of it. That's one of the reasons why we do these. So thanks for hanging out, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video.